Is everybody in? Is everybody in? The show is about to begin.
Welcome to the podcast, concerts that made us, interviews and stories, tales from the bus. We love taking you back to when it all went down. The greatest live shows and that cheering crowd sound. It's concerts that made us, concertsthatmadeus.com.
Tina Firefly, you're very welcome to Concerts That Made Us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
It's fantastic to have you now. I'm looking forward to diving into your music over the next bit. So, Beautiful Skeletons released the EP Temperance on May 10th. One hell of an EP. I can't stop listening to it. Take us a
Really?
bit deeper into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, all of us have such different influences and styles. We all grew up in different parts of the world. So it's just kind of weird how we took like one piece of different kinds of pie and made it into like a whole brand new pie. It's interesting, but one thing that we do all share in common is the love for this style of music. It's hard to categorize. Everyone's sort of like, oh, well, it's alt metal, it's female fronted metal, it's this, it's that. I don't give a fuck what it is. It's music that we like to produce. And hopefully we've tagged all the right keywords, but if not, just understand that no two tracks on this EP are the same. So it's pretty dynamic. You could get something sort of chuggy and fast paced like Letter to a Narcissist, all the way down to Butterfly Pinned on a Glass, which is a super slow ballady song. So yeah, I mean, you never know what to expect, which is good.
Exactly. Now, the EP was recorded in anticipation of signing with Italian label Wormhole Death Records. How did that impact the recording?
Well, it definitely helped motivate us to finish faster. But we were already in the process of recording when this sort of started to happen. But as you know, the slow season for music is towards the end of the year, and that was happening towards the end of the year. So we figured we were safe to take time to finish it out beginning of the year, start rolling it out. And that was before we got headhunted from Wormhole. So getting that deal and understanding like the stakes are a little bit higher this time, but also that we'll have, the label's backing. So very interesting for us. We were with a smaller label before. Generally, I find on the indie level, labels are really just for distribution deals. Not every label gives a crap what you do, as long as they're making royalties. But Wormhole's been a whole nother experience. I think you guys just do it differently in Europe, and I like it.
Good. Now, when it came to recording production, was there any like challenges or memorable moments that stick out to you?
Yeah, so many. There's not enough time. But who we recorded with is a gentleman that, I mean, is a longtime friend of our drummer, runs a little studio, just got it up and running. And it's super important, at least for me, from the vocal side, to feel like my sound engineer understands sort of the direction that we're going, and also that he or she understands like sort of the capability and limits of what I can do or what the other band members can do for their instrument. So once you kind of like get that out of the way, then getting some creative input to tie up all the loose ends or like to end a phrase or little things like that. It's always helpful if they have some suggestion, but at the same time, it's a fine line. I don't want anybody telling me to rewrite anything.
True.
So it's weird. It's like he had just enough directional insight that it inspired me to sort of like solidify a few things here and there that I hadn't thought of. I'm sure it's the same way for the instruments, but also at the same time, he had the right kind of ear for it. So nothing got lost in translation. I actually was quite inspired by the gentleman that produced this EP for a lot of like the backing vocals, harmonies, and stuff like that. I don't typically do any crazy harmony shit, other than, play it back in my ear and I'll try to match it on the spot. But he had like a lot of technique that I hadn't incorporated before. So
Oh, that's interesting now. You'll
yeah.
obviously be trying to work with him again going forward, will you?
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, we would love for the next one to be a full-length album, but we're all broke musicians, so we'll see. We'll see how that goes.
Fingers crossed. And
Yep.
the tracks on the record, is there any that I know a lot of them mean a lot to you, obviously, but is there any that stick out particularly that have a specific meaning?
Yes. I mean, they're all, of course, like you said, they all have meaning, but I have to tell you that the second track, Only Zuul, that that one in particular is incredibly special to me personally. I grew up in a highly religious background, super strict Roman Catholic, went to Roman Catholic schools, like the whole nine yards, right? And at some point in my childhood, they attempted to exorcise me because they thought I was possessed.
Oh my
And
God.
that whole experience was so jarring, and it was not a good experience. And it totally jaded me to really, establish religious organizations from the
Mm.
beginning. But I feel like I've been trying to write a song about that incident my entire life, and I just haven't had the right words, the right music, the right anything. It never clicked before. And
Mm.
then only Zuul came along and I pulled it out and it fit. And so for me, there's significance behind that track is sort of my own religious and salvation based freedom, if you will,
Yeah.
and I feel like I just haven't been able to write the right song about it. And now I have, so I can move on from that. So it's healing for me.
Yeah. Oh my God. I there's
Sorry,
so
that got
many
heavy.
there's so
Sorry.
many questions popping into my head. Oh my God. Was like to just jump back to the exorcism for a minute, if you don't mind.
Not at all.
Were you kind of aware of everything that's going on and like what are these guys doing? They're crazy, or were you
Not
wrapped
at
up in
first.
the
Not at first. I mean, I was very religious at that time. I was very concerned for my salvation. I would classify myself as spiritual now. But at that time, I didn't want to go to hell. I didn't know anybody who wanted to go to hell. And the Catholics tend to shove that down your throat. I didn't know that that's what they were throwing me in the back of the van for. I just knew that they had told me that I was required to come to mass. It was 8 o'clock at night, and that my parents had signed a waiver or something like that. And so I went, but it quickly turned into something else. In fact, afterwards, I kind of thought I was getting kidnapped for a hot second because the band, like, I wasn't familiar with any of those pastors and the nuns and all of that bullshit, and there was like a whole crew there. And I'm telling you, I've done some crazy shit in my life, but at that point in my life, at 12, you got nothing to worry about at that age. I've got
yeah,
kids myself, and I can't imagine like if I threw one of my kids into a situation like that, what the hell they would think. Um, but they have the benefit of me having had that experience, so they don't have to.
yeah, true, true. We I know exactly what you mean though with the Roman Catholic thing over here in Ireland. As you know, it's like it was a hotbed for Catholicism and everything, so we've had our own issues. I know exactly what you mean.
Mhm.
But yeah, oh geez. And back to the band, back to the music. You originally came together in 2017 as a casual kind of jam group. Can you
Yep.
take us through that time just to give the listeners a bit of history?
Yeah. That's Well, I should start with that. We're all seasoned musicians. At that time, we had a whole nother drummer, and myself and Einar, who's this one. He and I got together with our drummer at that time, and we were just jamming. I mean, literally just jamming. I had taken a 5 to 6 year break after I'd had the youngest of my kids because they just needed my attention. So I dropped out of music completely. Prior to that, I was, gigging 2 to 3 times a week and in 6 or 7 different projects and just the craziest shit that I could never do now. But I had to stop for a little bit. And when I came back, I was really hesitant about like, okay, do I want to do this all over again? Do I want to find a band? Do I want to go solo? I wasn't like enthused about that portion of the process. But then I saw a Craigslist ad looking for a singer for a casual jam, and then they had a bunch of influences listed, and I was like, okay, I like all of those bands. Let's just see what happens. So I met up with Anar, turned out to be a really sweet guy, very good musician, and we just started jamming. No intention in mind. And then over time and lineup changes and all of that bullshit, here we are. One little tidbit I will share, there's a track on the EP, I think it's number 4. It's Butterfly Pinned Under Glass. That was the very first song that we wrote on the very first time that we jammed. All of us impromptu very easily, which to me, it's like, okay, if you're going to have musical chemistry with somebody, you guys got to be able to jam. You got to be able to make shit up on the spot. And that was the very first song that we impromptu jammed to, and it never left. It's just gone through evolutions, but it never left. So,
Holy crap. That's pretty cool. That is
yeah.
pretty cool. Another thing that just came to me, I have to ask, how do your kids feel about having a cool rock and roll mother?
I don't think that they think I'm a cool rock and roll mom. I think maybe my son. So I've got three teenagers, 17, one's about to turn 16, and then my son's 14. And we were always taking bets about who was going to be the musical one between my husband and I. Were like, oh, maybe it'll be her or him. And as it turns out, it's my son. He's a drummer, but also picks up guitar and bass. And he's going to be like one of those people that you're just mad at how talented they are naturally.
Right.
So he's that guy. So he thinks it's kind of cool, but only because, he's a musician too. The girls, they're like, nah, I don't want to see your music videos. You're embarrassing me. Like, I don't like that kind of music. They're not into it. So
I kind of get that part. I have 2 little girls myself. They're 2 and 5, and no matter how much I try influence them into liking my sort of music, they're just dead set against it. They like pop and dance music and stuff like that.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. But wait, give them 10 years and they not only will they be dead set against it, but they'll argue with you about it. So
great. I have that
there's
to look
that.
forward to.
Oh yeah, so much more.
Oh my God. So the podcast is called Concerts That Made Us. So if you don't mind, I have to ask you some concert related questions.
Okay.
First off, as a concert goer, what concerts have made you?
Okay. Don't hate me, please. And
Okay.
hopefully your visitors won't hate either. I'm gonna preface this really quick. I was born and raised in the South Pacific on an island, very tiny, tiny island. I remember when traffic lights went up. When I left, there were no street names, so we didn't have concerts. We
Right.
didn't have any mainstream live music come out to us. Yeah, none. So I have actually only been to one concert.
Oh my God.
Yes. As far as like major artists go, I have only been to one, and that was 10 years ago. A friend of mine took me to go see Nine Inch Nails, and I was totally blown away. And that's literally been the only concert that I have gone to. Now, I've gone to support local bands, obviously, but as far as like national acts go, dude, I literally just the one. And it was amazing. I mean, if it's just going to be one, it should be Trent Reznor at his finest, right? But
I was just going to say it.
yeah. Now the guys behind me, they've been to a million, right? But for me, it just geographically, I was at an impasse there. I remember there was one time we had some news. It was like the talk of the island for 2 weeks. Mariah Carey had planned on flying to Guam, which is just next door to us, and she was going to do a concert there. And she touched down in Guam at that airport and found out that there was a brown tree snake problem. I don't know how she didn't hear about that before. And she said, "Fuck that," and she left. She
Oh
didn't
my
actually.
God.
People were mad. They were like protesting and stuff. Like that's literally the only artist at that point that had even come anywhere near that area to do a
My
concert. So
goodness. My goodness.
it's
Oh,
nuts.
and yeah, it is. It is. And your own shows then. You guys have played with Saliva, Glencannon, Damage Done, Wintersea, Ingve Malmsteen. When you're playing with guys on that level, what do you learn?
Don't touch their shit.
Right. Pretty
There's that.
straightforward.
Yeah. Make sure that if the tour manager gives you some rules that you follow them.
Hmm.
There's that. But more so than that, I find that local bands are always so much more stuck up and elitist than
Right.
the national bands. Yeah. National bands are like, oh yeah, Portland's just, like one of a million places that they're going to tour, or play. They don't really, there's not any real effect to that. But local bands who struggle to be heard anyway, I find that they're definitely harder to approach. And it seems like that should be the other way around, but it's not.
Yeah.
so,
How do
just
you,
following the rules and being respectful.
I like it. I like it. How do you carve out your place in the local scene then if it's so kind of elitist?
Yeah, it's rough. I think that the biggest thing is to be true to your own music and not change it because you want to fit in with a particular category. Um, and make good music. And on top of that, don't sit and make music and publish it that way and never play on a live stage. I mean, I get that there are artists that don't want to do that. They don't want to play live. They would much rather produce and make music and just sort of grow their brand, be it internet and do all that. And I guess and ultimately it's your own decision. But me personally, as a musician, I could never do that. I have to play. And I know the guys are in the same, we're all in the same boat. Like, this is our high on the stage, right? That's what we
Mm,
want. That's what makes our lives worth it. That's what gives us value. So, I mean, regardless of other bands, as long as you stay true to the music that you're playing and you have a good attitude and you don't act like your shit don't stink or that you're this famous person, which you're not. I think as long as you do that and you stay humble, everything else kind of falls into place, you know?
very true. Very true. I like it. I like it. Now, for any listeners that have not been lucky enough to catch one of your shows, what are they like? Give us the full experience if you can.
Well, considering that the stage is where all of us feel like we were born to be, our stage show is generally pretty high octane. So, I mean, if I have the ability to run around with a wireless mic, I will. If the guys are jamming out on stage, they like to slap each other's strings. They do all this shit behind me, and then when I watch the video back, I'm like, what the fuck are you doing there? They get goofy and they feel the vibe. So there's a lot of cohesiveness when we play. But more than anything, if you leave going, well, what the fuck was that? Where have those guys been? Then we have done a good show. If we haven't made you feel that way by the time our set ends, then we have miserably failed. Because we just want people to be like, holy shit, yes, this is the music
Mm,
that's gonna make me jam out. This is the music that's gonna make me go to their YouTube and subscribe to their channel, you know?
yeah.
So
Yeah.
live shows important.
Yeah. Yeah. They definitely are. They definitely are to make it worth it. Out of all the shows you've played, then, is there one that sticks out as the highlight? You constantly revisit it in your mind.
Yes. I don't know how the guys would answer this one, but I would have to say the very first time we played an outdoor venue on the Ingve tour. We went to Silverados, which is a outdoor venue in Black Mountain, North Carolina. Um, I told you I'm from a tiny island. I've never been to any concerts, really, with the exception of that one. I actually never even been into a venue that could house more than like 1,000 people. Because even the Nine Inch Nails concert was at a medium-sized venue. So even jam-packed, that place didn't hold more than 1,000 people. We got to Silverados and I looked out over the, first of all, the biggest stage I've ever played on. I was like, holy shit, it sucks not to have in-ear monitors because I like everybody's like a mile apart from each other. And I'm like, what? But I'd never even seen over 1,000 people there. There were like a couple that night, and not just there, but like we're playing to them. So to me, that stood out because I was like, oh shit, this is for real
Mm.
now. And that was the first stop on the tour. I was like, holy fuck, like way to open a tour, it was
Yeah.
insane. It was nerve-wracking and it was wonderful and we killed it. And I think everybody was just kind of like, who the fuck is that? Who are those guys? So yeah, I was that's got to be the one that stands out for me at
Sounds
least.
like one hell of a show. Jeez.
Yeah.
Hard to follow
Also, the
on for
first time I
from something
saw
like that.
Ingve.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I know. Yeah, set the standard too high.
Yeah. And to flip that around, out of every gig you've ever played in your career, Is there one that sticks out as the worst, and how did you overcome it?
Yes, we were on tour. We were on this fucking crazy tour where there was 0 days off. First of all, I'll never do that again.
Oh my God.
But show 11 or show 12, I can't remember, somewhere in there, I had actually lost my voice, like completely lost my voice. And everybody was setting up. I'm in the back, like with tea and honey and, lozenges and like pretty much anything and everything I could try.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm fucked. Like, there's no way that I'm going to be able to get through this set. And so I told the guys, I was like, you guys, I don't even think I can get 2 songs in. And they're like, well, we got to try. I'm like, okay, we'll try. I sound like a frog. And I think we got about 2.5 songs in before I 100% lost my voice. And
Oh,
between that and some other things logistically that were happening at that particular show, that's got to be like the worst experience I had. I was so upset. I never want to do that again. I never want to do 12 shows straight and end up losing my voice completely on the 13th. So
yeah. Oh my God. I'd imagine though, no
that
matter
had nothing
how
to do with the venue.
yeah, yeah, I'd imagine no matter how seasoned you are, how many shows, how many years you've been doing it, a tour like that, you are going to lose your voice.
That's what I told them. I was like, I know we're learning along the way, but let's make that like a big ass lesson, please. Because
Yeah.
I'm not doing that again. Like the last thing I want to do is like permanently scar any of my
Mm,
vocal cords because I pushed too hard. So just, 5, 6 shows, then you get a day on, day off kind of deal. I mean, that's pretty reasonable. But 14 in a row is insane.
yeah.
Insane.
Yeah. When it comes to showtime, then your post-show and pre-show rituals, how do you psych yourself up? And then afterwards, how do you wind down?
Well, I'm only allowed to have one caffeinated beverage on show day leading up to the actual set because I am a coffee addict, energy drinker, and all of those things dehydrate you. So in order to stay hydrated, I limit myself in the morning to 1 cup of coffee, and then when it gets closer to showtime, I've been drinking lots of liquids up to that point. Then I'll take my Gatorade that I've got in a cup and I'll mix it with an energy drink. And then I'll slam a 5-hour energy, and then I'll eat some caffeinated chocolates. And I'm like, fucking ready to go. Let's do this. That's my ritual.
Lovely.
I'm like, let's go as hard as we can, but hold on a second. Let me just catch up to all the caffeine I missed through the day. Yeah, that's my
Oh.
ritual.
No wonder you're so energetic on stage and you're like a sugar rush to the last.
Something like that, yeah. Because I mean, I go to bed early, I get up early. So when we headline a show and the headliner goes on at 11, I'm just like, how am I supposed to make it to 11? Like, I get to 11. So I got to be really careful how I parse out my day and stuff because it
Yeah.
definitely makes a difference. By the time midnight comes around and I'm like trying to do a full set and I'm sleepy as hell. Yeah.
How do you wind down afterwards then?
Uh, Driving. Driving at 2 in the morning, there's no cars
That'll do
around.
it.
Like it's pretty boring. Um, I'd say hanging out with my dog, and by the time I get home from a gig, everybody's asleep, but my dog's waiting for me the whole time. So that's always nice. He and I hang out in the closet while I take my makeup off. And I would say just like doing shit on my tablet, just playing some solitaire, something super boring to get my head out of there. It's really
Mm,
hard because I am so wound up before the set. And then especially if we kill it, my energy level's just like, I've got the
mm.
rush, the high, the adrenaline, and it usually keeps me up for hours after.
Yeah, I could imagine.
Everybody's worried about driving home and staying awake. And I'm like, no, dude, let's go. I'm like on crack cocaine at that point. Like, I've got so much adrenaline from the show. I'm like, I'm not going to bed anytime soon.
You're probably almost ready to play another show straight after.
Kind of. Yeah. Yeah. Bitch the whole time. I'm like, God, why does it have to be so late? And then we're done. And I'm like, oh, it's over. Yeah.
Hmm. And, your fans, what role do they play in your journey? Is there any moments or encounters you've had that stick out in your mind?
Anybody? walks up to me and tells me that they loved our music, to me, they're all on equal footing. I haven't, it's hard for me to accept that people like watching me sing. I know that probably sounds really weird. For a person who fronts a band, I'm pretty shy off stage. Like I always feel like I'm not good enough, or like I'm gonna make a terrible impression. And so it gets a little awkward for me, but not because I think that the person who likes my music is weird. It's just hard for me to wrap my head around the fact that somebody paid money to come listen to something that we did, and then enough so that they hang out after the show and buy our shit and want to talk to me. I think the weirdest thing is when they ask me to sign things, and I'm just like, "Are you sure you want to fuck up that CD you just bought? Like, are you sure? Okay, okay, Or they want to do
Mm,
pictures, and I'm like, I'm gross and sweaty, and like I've got eyelashes on, like different, like after the set, and I'm just like super tired and not great
mm.
looking, and let's take pictures, and I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm so stinky. Yeah, that I think that part's the hardest for me, is like
Mm.
accepting that people are fans, that they buy our stuff, that they come to watch us. That's the part where I struggle, because it's just such a weird concept to me, no matter how many times it happens. I'm just like, I'm a regular person just like you. So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Do you kind of, with being shy off stage and everything, then do you kind of have like a stage persona that you become when you get on stage?
100%. I don't even know how that developed, but Tina Firefly, that's who comes out when we get up on stage. All of a sudden, like everything of my normal personality is just kind of like goes to sleep, goes dormant or something. And half the time, I swear to God, I'm like in my head watching myself. Like I am not in control of this car. And we'll watch our shows back, because we all like to Monday night quarterback it. Like we're like, oh, we were off there, or I was flat there. We do that because we strive for perfectionism, even if the person's like, I didn't hear that at all. And I'm like, really? Because that's all I remember from that song. So we watch our shows back a lot just to make sure that we improve whatever we felt like we didn't do good. And when we do that, I always watch myself, and I'm like, I'm either cringing at something stupid I've said, or I'm wondering where the hell I pulled that joke out of. Like, I watch it back. It's almost like watching somebody else. It is the weirdest
Mm,
fucking thing. It's
I
really
could
weird.
imagine. Oh man. Before we dive into the last couple of questions, then, future plans. I've heard whisperings there might be some Europe dates, maybe.
Yeah, I hope so. That was looking more like a possibility a couple months ago. Now I don't know that that will happen this year. That is the ultimate goal for us. That's our ultimate bucket list goal. Everybody's like, you need to go to Europe. You need to play in Europe, and we have all kinds of connections there. But going from the west coast of Europe is fairly pricey, and
Yeah.
with how bad everything is price wise now, it seems like that's probably not something that'll happen this year, but it will be a goal for next.
Okay.
But as far as like our next shows go, we've got one at the Whiskey in LA coming up on the 24th. We're gonna open up for the Iron Maidens, which is really cool. Those ladies kick ass. We've got a festival, a couple festivals, and then we do a July tour. And we'll be able to announce in June where we're going for that tour.
I like it. Exciting times ahead. So
Yeah.
the whiskey, that must be the ultimate to get to play with the history of it and everything, is
Yeah, the guys, they were all like, holy shit, that's on the bucket list, right?
it?
And I was like, what's the whiskey?
Really?
Well, think of where I grew up.
Well,
What
true,
the fuck
yeah.
is the
Yeah.
whiskey? I have no idea. I'm a simple island girl. I don't know what the hell that is. So they had to fill me in. They were like, it's like the most iconic venue ever, Tina. Oh, my bad. So then I had to go look it up, and I was like, oh, holy shit. Okay, yeah, it is.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I wasn't nearly as excited as they were when we solidified that show, but only because I didn't understand like the historical significance of it in the music scene. And then later I went back and was like, okay, wow, now I see why it's a bucket list thing. But yeah, I was
Oh,
just kind of like, that's a weird name for a venue. It's looking at me like I'm crazy.
oh, that's great. That's great. We'll dive into the last couple. So these are a couple of random fun questions, but I'm intrigued to see your answers. First off, what are you currently obsessed with? It can be anything at all now.
Origami.
Right. It's the first time I've heard that one.
Oh, yes.
Right. I'd imagine it's very relaxing. Is it almost therapeutic?
It is. It is. It really is. And also I like anything with my hands. I am totally obsessed with creating new models, which yeah, I won't geek out on that too much, but I do love origami a lot.
Okay. Okay. Bit of a weird one now. If you had to spend 24 hours locked inside a room with any musician from history, who would you pick?
Whoa,
Told
24
you it was
hours?
weird.
Any musician in history. Alanis Morissette.
Right,
I
right.
would want to pick her brain.
Hmm.
Yeah, Jagged Little Pill was one of the first cassette tapes I ever bought, and I was so blown away. I was like, holy shit, who is this woman? So yeah, I would pick her for sure.
I love that answer. It's one you don't hear enough. Great one. And the final one. So, what is your go-to album? What's an album you constantly revisit?
I'm gonna have to say The Open Door by Evanescence.
Ah,
Uh, they Amy Lee's style has changed along with the times, which I think can either make or break you. And after Haunted, I was like, there's no way they can put anything else out there that's going to be this good. And then The Open Door came around, and I was like, I take that back. They really did such a good job on the soundscape portion of her songs. And so yeah, I would have to say that's probably my favorite one of all time.
I like it. I like it. Great one. Listen, Tina, it has been an absolute blast now. Thanks a million.
Thank you so much for having us.
Welcome to the podcast, conscience that made us into music stories, tales from the bus. We love taking you back to when it all went down. The greatest live shows and the cheering crowd sound. It's concerts that made us, concerts that made us.com.